In Spain, the afternoon siesta is still widely practiced, and most businesses close for several hours every day. True or false?
True.
In Spanish business culture, getting straight to the point in meetings is common without much small talk. True or false?
False.
It is considered rude to arrive exactly on time for a social gathering in Spain. True or false?
True.
Hi, and welcome to ASHA Global Voices Podcast. My name is Tjasa Strle, and I'm a cross-cultural leadership coach and the creator of ASHA Global Voice. Together with my guests, we are sharing stories from around the world about different cultures, leadership, and human experiences that connect us. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button. Your support means the world to me. And now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to ASHA Global Voices. I'm happy to introduce Belén García de Vinuesa, originally from Spain. With a remarkable career built over decades, Belén has worked extensively with the United Nations, focusing on refugee protection, human rights, and organizational development. Her work has taken her across the globe, shaping policies and leading teams in complex cross-cultural environments. Now based in Norway, she continues her mission for social impact as a General Director for Social Services, Housing, Employment, and Mental Health. Welcome, Belén. So great to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be with you tonight as well.
If we start with true or false statements. For the first one, you said that in Spain, the afternoon siesta is still widely practiced and that most businesses close for several hours every day. You said that this one is true. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, well, since I had to choose between true and false, I decided to choose true, but it's with a caveat because it's true that shops close, mostly small shops like pharmacies, small business, and so on, but not the big shopping centers. They close between 2 and 5, and people don't really sleep siesta, but they take a quite long break. And in offices, people take quite a large lunch break, easily 2 hours, and they usually go out and eat together. But I remember when I was small, my father used to come from work and he used to put on his pajamas and close all the blinds. And everybody had to be still because he took his siesta every single day of the week and then got back to work. So that has changed. People don't do it anymore, but they do take a long break in the middle of the day.
Okay, and that means also that they are probably working till later in the evening.
Yes, many people work until 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. It's still quite common.
Quite common. And the start is at 9 or somewhere there in the morning.
Yes, they do.
Okay. And you said for the second one that in Spanish business culture, getting straight to the point in meetings is common without much small talk. You said that this one is false.
Yes, because Spanish people are they're very relational, and for them it's very important to develop good relationships, both in business and in so there's always a bit of small talk before they get to the point, and even at the end of the meetings, they end up chatting about other issues and so on. It's not really effective
So
by the clock.
probably talking about personal things such as families and yeah.
Yes, people know each other at a different level, and many meetings even take place at restaurants and so on. Working dinners are very common, especially in business, but also in the public service.
And tell me for the last one, is it considered true to arrive exactly on time for a social gathering in Spain or not?
Oh, yes. And now that I live in Norway, which is exactly the opposite, it's considered really rude if you come 2 minutes late. I get so stressed if I invite people home and they even come 5 minutes before. I think it's so rude to come it's because I'm running, nothing is ready. And so I feel it really still, even though I've been living abroad for many years. Nobody expects you to be on time in a social gathering. The normal thing is to come at least 10, 15 minutes late.
Okay, so interesting, right? How different we are.
Yes.
I also always arrive on time. I cannot help myself. Maybe the Slovenian thing, or
So
just
lucky. You should live in Norway.
yeah. This part would work good for me. And tell me, Belén, what are some of the most defining aspects of Spanish culture you carry with you no matter where you go? You mentioned one.
Being late everywhere, yes, definitely. Cooking, slow cooking. I made the tomato sauce from scratch. I would never buy it already made. Traditional home cooking is, we learn it generation after generation, and I see it's a huge difference with other cultures. Maybe the sense of family. We Spanish families take care of each other above anything. And of course, there's always fights, and you work out your differences, and you can have a big fight and be friends again after a couple of days or even hours. And so the sense of family I carried with me everywhere, and my children are grown up, and I kind of invite them, force them to come every Sunday for dinner. So that we have a family meeting, and sometimes they complain because they have other plans, but at the end of the day they say they just love it to feel that they have a really strong like family where they can get the support. And I don't know, I would maybe say those things are
And
most.
do you also like to continue cooking Spanish food now living in Norway for your family?
Yes, at home we only eat Spanish food, and Norwegian men, they share the housekeeping with their partners, with their wives, and so on. So my husband has learned to cook Spanish food, according to my mother, even better than me. But Spanish mothers, they love their sons-in-law more than their daughters. So my husband cooks Spanish food, and my children have learned to cook Spanish food. And it's very funny because their friends love to come home and eat here because it's so tasty compared to the Norwegian way of cooking.
Yeah, I agree. Spanish food is amazing. And so great to hear that Norwegian husbands also share the housekeeping
Of
work.
course, they
And
do.
just for the listeners, I don't think we mentioned before, so your husband is Norwegian and you are
Yes,
Spanish. Yeah.
yes.
And tell me, also, if we stick a little bit more with Spanish culture, Spain is often seen as warm and social culture. What would you say? What was your experience? How this warmth and being social also affected networking and career opportunities in Spain?
Well, it's very important. I mean, my children who live in Norway, they love being in Spain, and they have become friends with my friends' children in Spain. So we go every summer there, and they just love it. They feel so welcome. It's so much fun. They go out a lot. It's much more social the whole time than here in Norway. And to start with, as I said, families, they keep together very much. So if you have somebody in your family who is in a position to help you to get a job, they will through contacts and call, I know somebody who could help you. And that is very different to Norway. I can tell a bit about it afterwards, where connections also count, but in a slightly different way. And the danger is also that if you don't have the right connections, it's harder to get a job, and that in some occasions, maybe not the most qualified person will get a job. So connections work in Spain very much for what it's worth. I mean, sometimes it's not really fair, but
Yeah.
they do really help.
As you said, positive and negative aspects of these social connections.
Yes,
And tell me also,
yes.
Spanish communication style or Spanish in general, you are known for being expressive and passionate. What would you say, how, in your opinion, this style kind of differs from other cultures you work in? But maybe this is a really broad question. you can compare it with Norway or
Well, then it's like a day and night comparison because Norwegians are extremely calm, or more than calm, self-contained. They don't show their feelings that much. They talk with a lot of self-regulation, and they can be quite indirect sometimes. So you have to be able to read between the lines. While Spaniards we interrupt. In Norway, interrupting is seen as really bad mannered, but in Spain, we interrupt because we are engaged in a conversation and it's totally okay. While in Norway, people are extremely patient and let somebody speak and speak until they can take the word. And we complain a lot in Spain. Like if we don't like something or it's too hot we don't like somebody, people talk a lot about it. Norwegians are much more contained. But then also I remember once I was driving with one of my colleagues in a Norwegian company I was working in for some years ago. And I was saying, I'm so happy there's so little gossiping in Norway. Yeah, I feel in Spain people gossip a lot more when they don't like somebody. And he just started to laugh at me and he said, you just don't get it because we do it much more discreetly. But he said gossiping is universal. It's just that we communicate differently. It's less visual. But in every culture, people talk about other people and so on. But in Spain, we're a bit more open about things and expressive, as you say. It's true.
yeah, makes a lot of sense. And tell me, Belén, what would you say? I would love, of course, we will talk a bit more about you being now in Norway and what kind of challenges did you have to overcome. And but if we stick a little bit more in Spain, and I ask you, if someone were to do business in Spain for the first time, what cultural advice would you give them?
Connections, relationships. Don't go straight to the point. Invite for a dinner and be ready to have a glass of wine in that dinner. It's the normal thing to do. Even if it's in the middle of the day, try to be open about your intentions, and I think focus on relationships. It's really important.
Talking about relationship, what would you say? Is it challenging or easy to make connections with Spaniards in Spain, for example, for expats living there?
That's a very good question because it's very easy to go out and talk to a lot of people. It's if you want to start up a business, I think Spanish business are very interested in having international connections and having and partners. But if you live in Spain as a foreigner, it's very easy to have a lot of superficial friendships. But if you arrive as an adult, it's quite difficult to come into society because Spanish people are quite loyal to their friends. And it's not that they're close people. They will go to a disco or a cafe and have a chat with you, but they wouldn't include you directly in their group of friends. To be honest, I've lived in many different countries through my career with the United Nations and so on, and I don't think it's a particularly Spanish thing. I think it happens almost in every country. I've experienced it in many countries that as an adult, if you want to make friends, you have to find an activity that will connect you deeper with other people than just trying to make friends going out to a cafe. Because friendships need a deeper mutual connections to work. And if you've grown up together with somebody, you have automatically that connection. But if not, you need to join a club, you need to join a choir. And there, it's absolutely possible to make friends and good friends. And I think in Spain, people will be very happy to have foreigners joining those kind of activities, and they will not treat them as foreigners, but as one of them.
And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. As you mentioned, that it's similar in every culture to really have strong relationships or to create these friendships. It takes time as well, right, to develop new relationships.
It does. It does.
So,
I remember when I was studying in university in Madrid, and we were at the cafeteria, and Erasmus students came, and we were all happy to talk to them for a little while, but then we all ran, except for those who liked a girl or a boy or something. There's always very good connections with Erasmus. But it was like, oh my God, now they want to expect that we're going to include them in our weekend activity. It's even though Spaniards are really open and friendly people, they have their habits, their groups of friends, and as a foreigner, it's not easy to come into it.
and I also, I thought in the past about it, why it's challenging maybe to really get friends from another culture. Just curious, what would you say? Do you think one barrier is language as well? Because I thought, that sometimes also we Slovenians, we usually speak Slovene, right? Which is our language. And then people are not so used to practice or to speak English every day. So I feel like, if there are people that they have to speak in English, it's kind of tiring in a way.
Yes, it is. And Spaniards generally are not very strong in languages. Later generations, they've had bilingual education, generally in public schools, but I mean, it's still children. Amongst adults, in who today are between 30 and 50, they hardly speak English, some French. So you really have to learn the language if you want to connect a bit better.
And as you mentioned also before, so now you are living in Norway. Tell me, I know you also traveled a lot and lived in many places before you settled kind of in Norway, but still coming from Spanish culture, what would you say was the biggest surprise for you coming to Norway?
It's taken me, I've been here in Norway now almost 17 years, and it's taken me a long time to really understand the essence of the Norwegian way of being and seeing life. And what has surprised me, first, child education. They have a lot of focus on building up social skills and self-confidence with children more than the academic aspects. So when I look at my nephews in Spain and nieces who do a lot of homework, many exams since they're little, and compared to my children here in Norway, here they hardly have any homework. They don't get notes or ratings until they are like 15 years old. So you grow up in without really knowing if you're better or worse than others. So I think it's a really healthy growing environment. And at the end, they all become engineers or architects like everybody else in the world. So it doesn't mean that they're worst off. I think that they have a very strong human perspective, which for me was a great surprise. Another element that has surprised me is how Norwegians practice equality. And even more now that I work with social services. In Norway, there are no private hospitals. So there's only public hospitals, even though there are private health centers. Everybody has public health covered. Schooling is free. Even private schools are subsidized by the government and they're very cheap. So if you decide to send your child to a private school, it's because you choose a certain religious education or a different type of education, like a Steiner school or that type of direction. But the Norwegian state is very supportive of all the population. And that's because they have oil and they have a very big pensions fund. Which helps to finance a lot of social services. And one of my friends said one day, Princess Mette-Marit, who is the wife of the of the future king, she gave birth in the same hospital as I did, probably the same bed as I did, And for me, as a Spaniard, who is used to very big social differences in Spain, this for me was a surprise. Another surprise is that children finish school very early during the day. They finish school at about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, while in Spain there's school until 4 or 5, and there's nothing for them. There's no activities for the children, so children are very alone for a couple of hours. And I just didn't understand how this is possible. Children who are 10 years old in their best age, they're like sponges, and such a rich country doesn't pay for having a big, learn music, arts, sports, and all these activities, extracurricular. They start in the afternoon at about 4 or 5 when we parents finish school, and most of the activities are run by parents. So in Spain, we pay trainers. Everything is organized, around associations, and you subscribed your child somewhere. In Norway, it's us parents who are football trainers, handball trainers. We organize so it's quite exhausting. If you have a job and then you run out, you have to make some food. And then if you want your children to take part in something, you as a parent have also to participate.
But what do you mean?
So-
So, for example, you have 3 children. So you are the soccer trainer for just your children, or parents kind of get together different children, and one of them is leading something and the other.
No, it's one of the parents
Huh?
is the soccer trainer for maybe 12 children. But then all the other parents, we take turns in bringing coffee for the parent who is training, and fruit for the children, and organizing that we tidy up the room and we clean afterwards, and that we buy we organize everything together. And luckily, I have a husband who is very generous and has a different type of job than I have, much more flexible, who has taken that role, because otherwise I would have died. But I hear that foreigners in Norway don't participate so much as Norwegians, because Norwegians, and that is the other side of the coin, which for me is very positive, they have a really strong sense of democracy and participation. So even though those couple of hours are empty for the children after leaving school, the rest of the evening, the weekends, the parents mobilize a lot and they participate a lot and contribute. So you almost never have to beg twice for who can drive the children to that match and who can, so, and another thing that's similar is that we live in a compound with houses in a row, and once a month we have a collaboration. We all go and clean the gardens and take the rubbish and cut the trees and fix whatever needs to be fixed. We help each other. And it's mandatory. So if you don't do it, everyone will look really badly at you. But so you have to register how many hours you've done. And for them, it's really natural and it's even fun to do that. For me, it's like, oh my God, do I have to go there? And that's really interesting because it's like, do I have to go and talk to all these people? Even though I'm Spanish and I'm supposed to be very extrovert and social. Norwegians, their relations are built around those things. In Spain, our relations are built around a glass of beer, like some other kind of activities.
That's really interesting. So what I'm hearing is that Norwegians also build relationships mainly kind of around some activities where they have to participate and even work and help each other,
Yes.
either be it with kids or with neighbors. Okay, interesting.
Yes.
And tell me, Belén, before we to this podcast, we met and we were discussing, and you said, because I only introduced you with your Spanish name and surname, but you do have another surname, which is your husband. And you told me a story that that also the Norwegians advised to you to add your husband's surname so that it will be easier in the job market when you started kind of your career in Norway. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, well, it wasn't actually the Norwegians. It was Some other foreigners I met, I joined a program by the Norwegian government of international talent. That's what they called. Like if you came to Norway as an immigrant but had long work experience from before, and to help you go at the right level in the labor market and not be unemployed for many years. And there I met some people who had changed their names. And in Norway, to change your name takes 3 weeks. You just make an application and suddenly your name is changed, like in every bank correspondence, everything. And so I took my husband's name, Birkenes, because I had applied for several jobs and I would never get a reply with my long Spanish name. And it helped me a lot. It helped me a lot, not only to get interviews, but they were like, oh, so you're one of us. I mean, you're married to a Norwegian, you have a Norwegian name. But I have to say that, again, I don't think this is just a Norwegian thing. I think this happens almost everywhere. In Spain, my mother, she was a university professor for English literature, and she was in the Department of Foreign Languages at university. And there were only Spanish professors and teachers. They hardly ever hired a German to teach German or a British person to teach English. They hired my mother as a Spanish person to teach English. And we had a lot of conversations about it, and it's a way like we only trust our own. It's a human element. Actually, I think in Norway, I've had amazing work opportunities that I'm not sure I would have got in other countries, or maybe even in Spain as a foreigner. Here I have a job with a lot of responsibility and very, very visible, and I've made a very quick career, and I've never felt any kind of skepticism towards me because I speak with an accent. My Norwegian sounds just like my English with a Spanish accent. But never anyone. So I think it's a bit like in the United States, that you as a foreigner can really, if you work hard, if that has been my experience in Norway. It was hard to get into the work market. And once I got in, and changing my name was absolutely a very good thing to do. And I personally don't have any personal attachment to my Spanish name, but I kept it as a middle name. It still shows in my signatures and so on. But after that, it's been a really good experience.
And you also said that you don't feel that like you're being judged just because you are from Spain. You also said that you have a little bit of accent. But still, I would like to ask you, were there any other stereotypes that you faced, maybe in Norway or in any other countries that you lived because of your Spanish origins?
Well, my colleagues laugh at me when I come late because I'm Spanish, and it's just a confirmed stereotype. Unfortunately, I've not been able to contradict them. But when people in Norway hear I'm Spanish, they start, oh, mañana, mañana, which means tomorrow, tomorrow. And the stereotype is that Spaniards always leave everything for tomorrow and that they're a bit lazy and so on. But the funny thing is that all the Spanish people I know in Norway, we're all very surprised by the way Norwegians take their work life. Because in Norway, you work from 8 in the morning to 4, and then you go home. And if you stay longer, and us Spanish people, we stay longer because we have grown up with that culture that you just do your work and you don't leave until it's done. And we take a lot of responsibility. Norwegians, they disconnect, they go home, and they go to train the children, football and so on. So in that sense, all my Spanish friends, they have done really well in the work market here, because people really appreciate how much responsibility we take and that we work a lot. So there is a stereotype, and they get very surprised when they get to know us, really, that we are zero lazy, and on the contrary, we work really hard. And that relates to many other nationalities as well. I think Norwegians get more and more surprised with foreigners working here, Eastern Europeans, work. They have the same work ethics as I would say us, and they work a lot, and they're very conscientious. And Norwegians don't expect it. They have some, yeah. Some other stereotypes is that we love party, and that, and I am not at all like that. I am a quite positive person. I like to talk to people, but I prefer much more talking to people in one-on-one or small groups, and hardly ever go dancing or so on. I like small dinners. I love to be at home with a chimney and a cup of tea. So,
Yeah, well,
stereotypes
these
are
were really
everywhere.
interesting examples. Thank you for sharing them. And also, Norway, it's known for its flat leadership style. But I'm very curious now to hear how does that look in practice?
That is such a good question, because Norwegians themselves are very proud of their flat leadership style. But when I came to Norway, I had a course in that program I was telling you about for international talents. It was an it was a leadership course, because they took for granted that we would go into leadership positions. And they told us that in Norway, you don't instruct somebody to do something. We have flat structures, and the problem with that is that you're in a meeting where things need to be decided, and nothing is decided, because leaders don't say, okay, you do this, you do that. So you go out of the meeting and everybody's confused, because the discussion has been in general terms. Okay, so this needs to be done and quite fast, and perhaps we won't do this. So they're really careful so that the boss is not bossy, and that there is a sense of democracy. What happens is that the decisions are taken in the corridors, and you always have to go afterwards and clarify. So it's a flat structure in the sense that leaders are open for discussion, and they want to get inputs, and they want participation. They want to pick everybody's brains. But what I have discovered, and what we were told in that course, is that do not be afraid to be yourself, because Norwegians really need more clarity in their meetings, because many times things stop up because nobody really knows who has the responsibility. So they do appreciate when somebody asks, but can't we just set some dates for this and divide our jobs and so on? So sometimes they don't want, because it's too uncomfortable to say, okay, you will do that, you won't. But often they appreciate it a lot, and it's like, oh, this was really effective, and so on. So that is the flat structure, really, that everybody participates, and there's not like clearly instructions. But the Norwegian work life is extremely hierarchical, and I've gone up all the grades. I started with the lowest, and now I have a high position. I have the highest position in my municipality, and nobody who is under the people directors reporting directly to me dares talk to me. They're really cautious, and it's very badly seen if I go to an employee who is under one of my directors. There's a lot of respect. And when I've been in lower positions, because as I said, I started from the very, very bottom, I couldn't even dream of talking to the boss of my boss, So it's really, people are really clear about it, and you notice at once if you have gone past that structure. So it's very hierarchical, but there's what I would say is that there's quite a lot of respect for individual opinions, and there's a lot of freedom of expression. So you can say, I don't agree with this. I think it's a really bad idea, and I would do this, I would do that. There's a lot of discussion and participation, and in that sense, I would say it's quite flat. But decisions are taken by decision makers, and it's quite clear who does it, and the law is also very, very clear, so it could be very quickly
On one hand,
misunderstood.
quite hierarchical with a lot of respect, and everybody knows with whom is it okay to speak to and with whom not. But on the other hand, if I heard correctly, within teams, or this is even my question, so within teams, then it's really, cherished if you are yourself, if you challenge also decisions, and if you, but this
Absolutely.
happens mostly between or within teams.
Within teams, yes. And it is very, 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 very healthy, that kind of culture. And there is a stereotype that in Spain people are very hierarchical in the work life and so on. And I think maybe in Spain, leader is a boss. I mean, in Spain, a leader can say, do this, don't do that. But in Norway, they don't. And I am, as a leader in Norway, I cannot tell one of my people underneath, don't do this. I have to coach them, ask them good questions. How do you think about this? What are maybe the dangers, the risks of doing that? I need to reflect together with them because otherwise I would be interpreted as a dictator. But so maybe that's the sense of flatness, and that's very important to understand when you're in Norway. Otherwise, you will fail as a leader completely. While in Spain, people don't really. I mean, it's more direct, no hard feelings, more. I think, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
There is also one thing I have to ask you. So it was mentioned even before that you worked for United Nations, living in different countries, being on the field all around the globe. Tell me, what comes to mind if I ask you what is the biggest lesson you learned from this experience?
Well, first, I have to say I've lived in Africa, South America, Eastern Europe. I worked in Asia. I mean, all over. The country where I felt most close to, and where because in most countries I had my bubble of expats. I worked in the United Nations, and I only knew international people, and I didn't really go deep into the local society. The country where I most felt close to the local society was Georgia, in Tbilisi. I was working there for a short period. And I felt I came right into it was such open and welcoming people. And I would have never expected that from, Eastern European, former Soviet. For me, it was amazing and it was lovely. I think Georgians are so similar to Spaniards in a way. But if we think about the kind of work I did, which was mostly related to refugee protection, I would say my biggest lesson was how strong refugees are, how important it is not to deliver aid to them, but to strengthen them to help themselves, because at one point they're going to have to integrate into society or return to their countries, and they need to have the tools to do so and be independent as soon as possible and take the right choices. And international help has developed itself a lot in that sense, that before it was like very kind of charity, and now it's much more oriented to empowering people, and I believe that very strongly. And I think the best way to help refugees is to listen to what refugees think they need and to help them find those needs themselves by every means one have. And another thing I've reflected a lot about is that every refugee I ever spoke to said, I want to return home. I don't want to be here. And sometimes in European countries or in the West or so, we think refugees just want to come to our countries to work and live. And that is not true. We all love our homes, our families. And if we have to leave as refugees, it's because we're persecuted or because there's war. And then there's immigrants, and even immigrants who migrate for economic reasons do so because it is not sustainable to live the way they live, but they love their families, they love their environment. So that gives me a lot of respect for refugees, and it's amazing all the struggle they have to go through when they come to our countries. And we expect them to be really grateful because we take them, but for them, it's a horrible experience. They just don't want to be there, even though they're very grateful to get protection and they need protection. Every refugee I spoke to, they said, I never dreamt of becoming a refugee. I thought I was so safe. And I think this is something we all have to remember. One day we can be in that situation. And I heard there's a Danish documentary or a Danish movie that came out a few months ago or a few weeks ago about a natural disaster where Danish people have to flee to other countries. And I think everybody should watch that movie, mostly in the Western world, because we see it now with many Ukrainians. They've had to fled and they never even dreamt of living their comfortable lives, a strong country, very well developed, and everybody mostly are highly educated. So life has many surprises. You have to cherish your everyday life, and you have to strengthen you and your family as a person, and just be ready for anything that can happen, and have respect for those who come, because they would have much rather been
That's a
home.
great message, which I strongly agree with. Yeah, if we think about it, that it can happens to us tomorrow, we never know, then we can also have more empathy towards refugees, even though we are not in their shoes, thankfully, at the moment. Absolutely. And also, Belén, tell me, throughout your career, so working for United Nations, working now as a General Director for Social Service, it seems like you were always drawn to humanitarian missions. And why do you think this is important for you?
Well, I've always had like a tendency to help others, a desire, but it has changed through life. When I was young and when I was deciding what to study, I really wanted to save the world. I was a huge idealist, fight for equality and human rights and so on. So I studied law and then took a master's in international law, and I went into the United Nations to save the world, and it took very short to realize, my goodness, this is a huge bureaucracy, a huge machine. This is the top of the iceberg. And so I got a bit demotivated towards the end of my career in the United Nations. I felt, and there was partly a very big bureaucracy, because my last years in the United Nations were in Geneva, in headquarters for the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. People were extremely professional, but I felt very far away from the field, from where things were really happening. And I thought, if there's a bomb one day in this general headquarters, I don't think anybody would notice it in the refugee camps, because we had many task forces and working groups and things. And so, and then I came to Norway, and I felt I had lost a bit my motivation. I couldn't really find it. And I applied for some jobs with refugee organizations. I didn't get them, but I got a job with an oil and gas company, a very big company, because of all the skills I had acquired working with refugees, organizational development strategy, and so on. And I learned a lot and I loved it. But one day, one of my colleagues said, "Oh my God, I wish you were a little bit interested in what we're really working about." I was leading project managers, and this was a project man. And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "You could just put up a poster in your office with one of the equipment we work on and learn the parts." And so on. And I realized, my God, they have discovered me. I have no interest in oil and gas. I was actually more interested in how the systems worked and the organization and so on. But my real vocation is in the social field, and that is where I really give my best. And I have no intention of saving the world, but I love working in a municipality where you can see that you can really improve the life of a lot of citizens, and especially in a society with quite a good resources and a sense of equality, like in Norway. It's a very, very rewarding job, and there's a huge problems with mental health, with drugs. It's no different than any other country in the West, but I feel it gives me a lot of meaning. It's beautiful to see people who go further in life, who manage to go from an institution to their own apartment. It gives me a lot. I don't know.
No, for sure.
It's a personal.
I can relate. It makes a lot of sense. You are doing
Yes.
something that you believe in, and you see some changes for
Yes,
the better.
fully.
And I think this would be soul fulfilling for everyone. And as well, you mentioned, so you are now a general director for social service in your municipality, and this is a company with 4,000 employees, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the municipality has about 20,000, and I have about 4,000 of them in my
And tell me, what's the
organization.
most challenging and what's the most rewarding part of it for you? Yeah.
Of leading such a big organization. Well, the most challenging is knowing all the ins and outs of the organization. And what I do is I dedicate some days every couple of months to go and work as an employee in some of the services, just to get to understand. And it's really useful and it's so much fun. But it's so difficult from my position to really understand and be able to manage all the budgetary problems and everything when I still don't know all the bits and pieces there. I've been 2 years in this position. And what is also quite challenging is prioritizing between being strategic and solving the daily problems. We have huge problems coming up and my position is to solve problems. So the problems that are escalated to me are the worst. Those, and nobody can solve, or that two units are very, how do you say, they disagree a lot with each other. So keeping moments where I can reflect, to have a helicopter view and keep the direction of the organization right, and inspire and transmit the key messages, and at the same time solve everything and respond to thousands of emails. And so keeping that balance is the greatest challenge, I think. And the most rewarding thing, I think, is leading people. I think it gives me so much energy. I have extremely valuable people in my team, and just talking to them and see how they work and see how they react, how they solve extremely difficult situations, discussing with them. And as I said, Norwegians don't expect to be instructed, but they like to discuss and they like to sound ideas with you and so on. And it's extremely rewarding, and also to see how that impacts the lives of people. I mean, I couldn't ask for more. I feel very privileged.
Beautiful to hear that. And also, when you were speaking it, I think we could all felt it, how passionate you are about your work. And I also have to ask you, like, I have to say, it's impressive that you're a woman, and for women is sometimes more challenging. And you are as well from a foreign country, so you are Spanish, living now in Norway, and you managed to get a top leadership position in Norway. What would be some advice for women who aspire the same?
I would say, well, I never aspired a top position in Norway. On the contrary, I had worked so much in the United Nations that I thought, now I'm going to work really low key and so on. But I was used to be in an environment where I took decisions, so I missed it. But what I did, and I first learned the language perfectly. I mean, it took me at least 10 years to have the confidence to send emails without having my husband correcting them. But you have to master the language to have a top position. You cannot speak badly, or you can have an accent, it's no problem, but you have to be able to speak structured and concrete, and communicate really well, not have room for misunderstandings, and understand, also read between the lines and so on. And second, you don't have to focus on reaching a high position. You just have to do a good job. And you have to start, if you don't have a job, you have to start with anything. I started with a horrible job in the oil and gas industry at the beginning. I was crying every night. What am I doing here? I don't understand anything. It's horrible. But 6 months later, I got a much nicer job in another oil and gas company. And then in some jobs, I've been asked if I wanted to take it, because if you work hard, if you have initiative, if you're interested, if you have the right work ethic, you get noticed. And then also is when you have like the strong background and you've had some relatively okay positions, is not be afraid to apply to one of these top positions. Because my husband laughs at me when I say it, but I don't think they have fantastic candidates, because the world is made of humans like you and I. If people think about their bosses, they're human beings just like them. So I have not been afraid to apply to things that I thought I could deal with. And at the beginning, it's often a nightmare. Oh my God, how am I going to do this? And also at the beginning, it's true that people hear your accent and you're a woman and you're like from outside. I've always noticed at the beginning, people don't really trust me, but after about a year, they trust me very much. And that happens all the time. So you have to accept it and not force anybody to trust you. You just have to act consistently, work hard, and have good relationships. I think it's very important. Never burn your bridges. You have to have integrity and speak your truth, but in a friendly way, because relationships are not only important in Spain, but everywhere. So it's not because you have good friends you're going to get a position, but you cannot be a very complicated person to advance in your career. You have to be able to sort very difficult personalities around you. So in these top leadership positions, there's a very big percentage of psychology you have to use to never miss your patience, your balance. I mean, we all do sometimes, but as little as possible. And just believe in yourself. Even though the surroundings don't believe in you and people laugh at you if you apply for certain positions, you just do it, and very often you get it. But you have to be ready to start from the bottom. It took me 17 years, so it's not that impressive either.
Great advice, Belén. One last question I would like to ask you. If we circle back a little bit, you said that when you were really young, you wanted to save the world. This was your mission. So I have this kind of idealist question for the end that I always ask my guests. Also, with everything happening around the globe, we also live in challenging times. So my question is, if you could imagine a better future for people globally, what does that look like?
Peace, peace. For me, I will stop all the wars. I mean, for me, the war is the worst thing ever. And social equality. I mean, both things are, but I think if there were less wars, there would also be greater social equality. Imagine all the money countries use both to kill each other and to buy or sell arms or manufacture. So I think, and that is one of the things I have missed most in the whole Ukraine context. And that is totally independently of the process that's going on now about peace talks and Trump and all that. But since the beginning of the war, I have really missed a pacifist movement and real efforts for peace from day one. It's been all about defending each other and how are we going to escalate and support and more arms. And I see that with most wars, that it takes many years before one starts to talk seriously about making peace. And when one does it, and when they do it, many, many, many people have died or they have had huge tragedies in their lives. And I'm a
Me
strong
too. I
peace.
think these are great, both of them great wishes. So peace and social equality, social welfare. Thank you so much, Belén, for everything that you shared with us tonight. It was an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you, Tjasa. Very, very nice talking to you. And you had very good questions. And I really like doing this because it helps me reflect a bit about what's important for me once again and gives me a bit more motivation as well.